Hey everybody, and welcome back for task 4.2. Today we have one learning target that we're going to be working on, and that is I can create an expression to model a situation. Now, you may notice this is the same learning target we had in our previous video. However, this time we're going to be looking at creating expressions where we're using variables to represent values. As a reminder, in our previous video, we were given a story and we were asked to find kind of what operations were described and create an expression. An example of a problem that we did in our previous video would look like this. You were asked to create an expression by reading this story and then kind of getting to an expression at the end, and our expression had numbers and variables in it. Today, we're going to be focusing on expressions that work with all variables. And sometimes this can be very helpful if, for example, you're writing code for like an Excel spreadsheet or a computer program where you want that program to go in, grab the information, and then do the same operations with it each time. So this is something that comes up a lot in things like programming, web design, business, accounting, things like that. Let's read this scenario. It says Elvira, the cafeteria manager, likes to keep track of the things that she can count or measure in the cafeteria. She hopes that this will help her improve the efficiency of the cafeteria. To remind herself to keep track of important quantities, she has made a table of variables and descriptions of the things that she wants to record. Here is a table of the things that she has decided to keep track of. So she has decided to keep track of the number of lunches sold in the salad line, and she's going to use the variable S for that. She's going to keep track of the number of lunches sold in the sandwich line. She's going to use the variable W. In the lunches sold in the pizza line, she's going to use the variable Z. The price per lunch in dollars is going to be P. The number of minutes it takes to prepare a lunch is going to be M, and the number of total classes in the school is going to be C. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use her variables to try to write an expression. And after we write the expression, we're going to determine the units of the answer. Let's talk about units for a second. If I'm counting the number of lunches sold in the salad line, the units would be lunches, because at the end, my answer would be like 7 lunches. The number of lunches sold in the sandwich line would also be lunches. At the end, my answer would be, 25 lunches. Another example would be price per lunch. Now, I want to point this out because that word per has a very special meaning in math. When we use the word per, it means divide. So the price would be dollars. Per means divide by lunch, the number of lunches. So it's $5 per lunch would be $5 divided by lunches. The number of minutes it takes to prepare a lunch. So the number of minutes per lunch would be minutes per lunch. And C would be the number of classes in the school. We're just going to call that classes. At the end, we want to kind of come up with what would the units of your answer be. Let's do an example. So problem number 1 says, create an expression for the total number of lunches served. Now, total number of lunches served tells me to add up all of the lunches. When you see the word total, that means that we should be adding. That's a math word that means we should be adding. So since we're serving salads, sandwiches, and pizzas, in order to figure out the total, we need to figure out the number of salads plus the number of sandwiches plus the number of pizzas. Now, in order to use variables to represent that, since she's decided to use S for salads, we would write S, plus since we've decided to use W for sandwiches, we would write W, plus since we've decided to use Z for pizzas, we would write Z for pizzas. And this would be your final expression. The total number of lunches would be adding the salads plus the sandwiches plus the pizzas. Now, let's talk about units. If we're counting the total number of lunches that we served, then your answer here is going to be the number of lunches. So your units would just be lunches, because that's what we're counting, is how many lunches. So at the end, your answer would be like 35 lunches. So your units would be lunches. All right, let's talk about the next example. So the next example says create an expression for the total amount of money earned by selling salads. So total means that we're going to be adding up, but this time it's just the salads. Now let's think about this for a second. If we're going to be finding the amount of money earned by selling salads, then we need to look at the variables for money and the variables for salads. Let's say that each salad costs $3. Then I sell 10 salads. If I wanted to figure out how much money I made, I would just do 3 times 10. So to find the amount of money earned by selling salads, I would take um, the number of salads, which is S, and I would multiply by the amount of money or the cost per salad. So times the price. Well, in this problem, we've decided to use the variable S for salads, and we've decided to use the variable P for price. So because of that, my expression would just be S times P. Now, if I had said like the total amount of money by selling salads and pizzas, then I would have added, because it said total, the next part, price times the pizzas. Now, as far as units goes, we're trying to find the total amount of money. So at the end of this problem, we're going to be getting an amount of money, which in this case, we said we were measuring in dollars. And the reason I know we're measuring that in dollars is because it says in the directions here that we're measuring in dollars. So at the end of this problem, if we're counting the amount of money, our answer is going to be in dollars. For number 3, it says create an expression for the total amount of money earned by selling all lunches. So all lunches means now we've got to add them up. So we need to take the salads, which we already talked about, times the price, plus, because we're adding them up, we need to take the number of sandwiches times the price, plus, because again, we're adding them up, we need to take the number of pizzas times the price, which means if I create this using variables, it would be SP plus the number of sandwiches we were using, W. So WP plus, for pizzas we were using Z. So ZP. And again, I added them all up because it says the total. Now let's talk about units. At the end of this problem, we want the amount of money. So if we're measuring the amount of money at the end of this problem, we would be measuring that in dollars. Let's look at the next example. So it says create an expression for the amount of time it takes to make the pizzas sold at lunch. So now we're changing gears a little bit. Instead of looking at the price, we're looking at time. If I go back to my instructions here, it says M stands for the number of minutes it takes to prepare a lunch. So if I want to know how many minutes it takes to prepare all the pizzas, then I would take the number of pizzas times the number of minutes. Now that means I'm going to use the variable Z for pizzas times M for minutes, and that would be my answer. Now, as far as variables go here, or sorry, as far as units go here, we're finding the amount of time. If we're finding the amount of time, our answer is going to be measured in minutes. So the end here would be like, it takes 35 minutes to make the pizzas. For number 5, it says create an expression for the amount of time it takes to make all of the lunches for the day. So we want the amount of time that it takes to make all of the lunches for the whole day. Well, that means we want not just the time for the pizzas, but the time for the salads, the sandwiches, and the pizzas all added up. So here I would do the salads times the minutes that it takes, plus the sandwiches times the minutes that it takes, plus the pizzas times the minutes that it takes. Now, at the end, that means I'm going to change these to variables. So I would have SM plus WM plus ZM, and that would be my final expression. Now, as far as units goes, if we're just finding the amount of time, even though it's the total amount of time, it would still be measured in minutes. Last but not least, number 6 says the number of lunches purchased per class. Now, it's really important here to realize that we used that math word per, which means divide. So we're going to be dividing in this problem. To figure out the number of lunches, we're going to need to add up the number of salads plus the number of sandwiches plus the number of pizzas to get the total number of lunches. And then per class means we need to divide by the total number of classes. Now, in our directions here, it says we're going to use S for salads plus W for sandwiches plus Z for pizzas, and then divide by, we're using C for classes. And this would be your final expression. Now, as far as units, because per means divide, our units would also be a fraction. So it says number of lunches per class. So lunches per class tells me that lunches would go on the top and class would go on the bottom. So your answer here would be there were 10 lunches per class that we made. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. That is the end of our video for today, and I will see you soon for some practice.